Please join me in welcoming Anthony Bourdain to the stage and back to Google.
Where am I sitting?
So Tony, you've had a pretty remarkable year. Dinner with President Obama, Parts Unknown now in its 8th season. You're currently traveling the country on the Hunger Tour. And like I mentioned, you've recently launched your newest cookbook, Appetites. So kind of what's been the biggest highlight of 2016?
You know, for me, I mean, other than, you know, personal moments, it's the technical satisfaction of getting of knowing that, sitting down with the crew, talking about how we want a show to look and sound, and then actually getting that thing.
Yeah.
So there've been a few shows over the last season that we've been shooting that were just intensely creatively satisfying to me. I'm not in any of those scenes. It looks good, the camera moves in a certain way, the music comes up the way it's supposed to, all of those strange and terrible manipulative powers of television come together to tell a story the way, you know, after many beers, me and the crew imagined it might, if we could pull it off. Those are the most satisfying moments for me. I mean, look, obviously sitting down with the president is in a little noodles, family-run noodle shop, second floor, not particularly clean one either, was really satisfying and really fun.
How did the Secret Service allow that, right?
They were not pleased. It was not an ideal situation for them. They would have much preferred, I got the impression, from early on, you know, a safe banquet hall at the Hilton or something like that, or at least a more Western-friendly restaurant with multiple exits.
Yeah.
This was, you know, one way in, one way out, second floor, narrow streets, not the usual. They couldn't fit Secret Service in the room with us. It was just room for the camera guys, me, one producer / director, and people eating, and the president. But it all happened, and it was most awesomely surreal moment of the last year for sure. But for sheer joy, it's when we get a shot that I thought would be awesome, and it ends up being awesome.
Yeah. Could you have imagined, I mentioned Kitchen Confidential, you were working at Les Halles, the journey from the chef to kind of this media, TV personality known across the world, how has that been most difficult, kind of satisfying? You've mentioned the shots, the cinematography aspect, but from a personal level, kind of what has been that journey for you?
Well, I was quite sure when I wrote Kitchen Confidential that no one was going to read it. And that was both that was a very liberating thing, because I'd never had to think, I didn't have the burden of trying to imagine what people would expect, or what they might like or dislike, or what the market wanted. I wasn't thinking about any of those things. Because of this little article, I had an opportunity to tell a story, and I wanted it to be entertaining and legit for people in my industry in the New York area. But this was as far as I thought it was going to go, and even after TV people started offering me shows, I very much thought I better keep my day job. This can't possibly work out. I mean, TV, who gets to have fun on TV?
Yeah.
You know, who gets to make a living writing? I mean,
traveling the world.
I've been in the restaurant business a long time. The restaurant business is, of course, filled with people who think that someday they're going to make a living writing or acting or in entertainment somehow. And I knew this was delusional behavior, you know, from 30 years of seeing it up close. So look, it was a big, everything changed. I really think the only thing you can credit me for is that I didn't fuck it all up.
Yeah.
You know, once I got my break, I was 44 at the time, which is probably good, because I would have really made a mess of it if it had happened to me earlier. You know, I recognized that it was late in life.
Yeah.
I caught a big break here. Let's not, you know, make the usual mistakes.
Yeah. And so Parts Unknown, like I mentioned, season 8 started in 2013. No reservations, the layover before that. Kind of how did the CNN project come about, and how did you?
CNN called at just the right time. I was seriously considering re-signing with the previous network, in spite of sort of what I call the barbecue syndrome, meaning I always made the mistake in previous series of making a show where there was barbecue featured. And once you do that, you're inevitably called into the vice president of creative or programming or whatever they call these people. And they say, you know, we've noticed that, you know, the barbecue show really, the ratings were through the roof. Could you do more shows like that of like really morbidly obese people eating barbecue for like an hour, you know, preferably in a southern state where they speak English, you know, we don't have to subtitle them. You know, why do you have to go to these foreign countries? They talk funny. The barbecue show's through the roof. We need more of those. And I'm like, oh, this is not a good sign. And they really liked The Layover, which is a series I despised and have never watched an entire episode of. I did it for all the wrong reasons. You could see me in it. I'm like puffy and miserable and filled with self-loathing, staggering from scene to scene. And they loved that, which is also bad. And out of the blue, CNN calls. And I remember we all looked at each other like, CNN, like, why do they want us?
Yeah.
I mean, what was really cool is we sent them the 4 shows the Travel Channel hated the most.
Yeah.
Like just the weirdest, most antisocial, ugly, self-indulgent. You know, there was one, it was a Christmas episode with Samantha Brown as a sort of crackhead alcoholic who shoots me in the kneecap. And I think who else was in it? I think Christopher Walken and Nora Jones. I mean, it was a really oddball show. The Travel Channel hated it so much they aired it like on Sunday morning at like 7 a.m., hoping that no one would see it. So we sent CNN those 4 shows and said, could you watch these? And then if you still think you know what you're doing, you know, I'd really love to come talk to you. And they said, yeah, we know what you do, and we'd like to help you be even stranger and more awesome, and we'll back you up, and we can get you in all these countries that you were never able to get into. And they have honored that initial commitment steadfastly since the beginning, and to their credit, eternal credit, no matter how we sent them some really difficult material. Our hentai show in Japan had to be worrying to them. It was very early on. It was like tentacle porn, eh? I was like, oh God, this is CNN. But I've never gotten a phone call from the network ever that started with, how about, or wouldn't it be great if, never. So they really let us do pretty much whatever we want the way we want, and they've been really supportive and helped us do that.
So that kind of leads to my next question on how you guys pick locations. So season 8, Vietnam, Nashville, Sichuan, China, Houston, London, Brazil. How did you select these locations? Do you have a list of places in mind, and then feasibility with shooting and schedule?
Sit around with my camera guys, and we have a few beers, and we say, where...
Spin the atlas and...
No, where do we want to go that we've never been that would be awesome? Maybe I'll have a random barroom conversation, as happened with Nashville. I was talking to Dean Fertitta from Queens of the Stone Age, and he said, yeah, I live in Nashville. I said, really? I kind of always was thinking about Nashville as a location, and we started to talk about people he knew and things we might be able to do there. Other times, and a lot of times, in fact, I'll see a film that I love. That I saw Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express, and I called up my camera guys, and I said, look, have you seen this movie? The cinematography is just so amazing. Where do we have to go to get that look, to move cameras like that? And so we selected a show from there. Other times, personal story. Wouldn't it be great to bring Eric Ripert and his delicate palate to Chengdu in China and just destroy him with rice whiskey and, you know, nuclear hot, you know, Sichuan hot pot? You know, that's comedy gold and fun. No, I have the best job in the world. I literally get to sit around and with the aid of, you know, alcohol and knucklehead friends, just go anywhere in the world that strikes our fancy. And then also we think about, like, where have we already done a show that we can go back and do completely the opposite? You know, so we may have been in LA already. We pretended there was no one there but Koreans. Let's go back and pretend that no one lives in LA but Mexicans. So that's what we just did that.
And then in a lot of the
You know what's really interesting, by the way? I don't want to give anything away, but we found this really interesting thing about Chicano culture in LA. They all love Morrissey. They're really into Morrissey. There's like this really powerful strain of deep love for Morrissey in the Chicano community. It's like, why? And the explanation's really interesting. But I'll leave that to the episode.
Stay tuned. And then in a lot of the episodes, right, in Thailand, Borneo, Nashville, we see you getting the tattoos on the show as well. So kind of what do they mean to you? I know a lot of Googlers have questions.
Particularly at my age, a tattoo is not going to make me younger. It's not going to make me prettier. It's not going to make me hipper. It's not going to make me more relevant. It's like an old car. There's so many fucking dents in it that one more don't matter. It's to remind me of stuff. Sometimes it's self-immolation. I mean, I'm generally kind of something happened and I want to just, I don't know. It's but it's not a particularly, most of the time it's not a particularly meaningful thing, and it's definitely not like modification in a positive way. I don't expect to say, wow, really, that's really, it changed my entire view of you. Now, so at this point, there's nowhere you can go without seeing tattoos. Like every chef in America has got "I love bacon" tattooed on their arm. It's like, do you really need that? You know?
Yeah.
I like sex. I'm not gonna get "I like sex" loved in one. It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. So
I don't need the T-shirt. That's what I'm saying.
So in conjunction kind of with the new season, you've also launched the Hunger Tour this fall, right? Which is more of a live performance. And I was wondering, what's the idea behind that project? How is that different from...
Dick jokes.
Dick jokes. In front of a live audience.
Same rules. It's honestly, it's stand-up. It looks like a talk.
Yeah.
But it's, you better have you're standing out there on stage talking about sustainable agriculture. You better have a dick joke every 60 seconds, or you better get a laugh. I'm talking about food and travel, and I'm talking about it in a as honest a way, in a straightforward a way as possible. But the rules are, when you're standing in front of a big audience who paid, way more than reasonable amounts of money, it should be funny. So that takes some doing. And I guess what I like about it is it's terrifying. It's really terrifying to walk out in front of a big crowd and talk for an hour. And, you never know. Who's going to be out there? And it changes from night to night. Like Friday, Saturday night, there's no home team. There's no restaurant people. There's no cooks because they're all working. So the terror is I go out there, they're all golfers. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, geez, everyone's in like golf pants, and there's kids in the front row, which like, all my anal jokes are out the window right away. But what I found is sometimes it's really interesting. Like I went to Salt Lake City to do a gig, and I'm driving through town on the way to the venue, and it's like the beginning of Blue Velvet. It's all these, it's like perfect Americana, and it's like I realize, oh my God, it's all Mormons. I'm totally screwed. They're filthy, filthy people. They love dirty, nasty, nasty jokes. So it was like a wonderland, repression. It's great for comedy.
Yeah, and
I would do comedy clubs. I'd go in and do 10 minutes just to see, work on, Guy Fieri jokes.
And I guess it's a good way to engage kind of with the fan base. And I know we were talking, you're avid on social media, on Instagram with Insta stories. How do you decide what you're sharing then, kind of behind the lens?
Is it fun?
Is it fun?
Again, we were just talking backstage about the Instagram stories. Yeah. I love those because you can set them to music. Crudely, I have to hold my iPad here, all queued up, and press the button, just so I catch that little bit of music that I want for a slow pan across. Well, I don't know. I just like the idea of doing these sort of atmospheric pans over stuff. Instagram is fun. They all have independent functions. For me, Twitter, I enjoy Twitter because it's like writing haiku. Yeah. Very much like it's a restrictive format. You've only got 140 characters to work with. So you better pretty much tell a whole story within those 140 characters. And, not in the usual dreary way. Hey, everybody, be sure to tune in. I hate those. So that's a more specific story. Instagram, the stills are more impressionistic. I don't really tell people a lot about what's happening in the picture. And then the stories are even more impressionistic. And then Facebook, I read it, but I don't actually do that. That's more business stuff. It's usually pillaged from other platforms.
Yeah. And then another kind of upcoming
project. But it's fun. It's storytelling like any other form of storytelling. Just the language is a little different. It has its own restrictions and freedoms that's always interesting to me.
Yeah. And I was going to say another upcoming project that especially here at Google people are excited about is the Bourdain Market coming out on the water.
Hello, neighbor.
Yes.
You'll be upstairs. And we've been, one of the things that was worrying early on was, you guys are notorious for this, very self-contained dining options. And I said, what if none of them come downstairs? What are we going to do? But apparently there will be some kind of relationship there so that, we'll have we're talking about 110. We're talking about upwards of 100 hawkers, vendors, and the model is very much the hawker centers of Singapore, Hong Kong's Dai Pai Dong, Barcelona, where you have, one operator selling maybe two things, which they've been doing relentlessly well, often for generations. Yeah. So we're, sandbagging people from all over the world to come here. I mean, we're not, this better be right. If we're doing chicken rice in New York, we expect Singaporeans who have emigrated from Singapore or visiting from Singapore to say, this is not bogus, this is, pretty damn respectable. I mean, I've jokingly said, we're hoping to do a pojang, which is, if you don't know, it's a sort of tented Korean street drinking establishment. And you got to do that right. And so for me, the whole key to the market is if a Korean grandmother and her hipster grandson come in the first week, if they think what we're doing is bullshit, we are doomed. Yeah. We got to make both those people happy, because that's very much kind of the target audience. Yeah. And it's very much the sensibility and the kind of flavors and design and the sort of stuff that we should have had in New York years ago, but don't yet.
And that's something to look forward to, I guess, in 2019 is...
Yeah, well, I think that's a reasonable expectation. It's a huge project. I mean, it's a public market, we're selling produce and meat and fish. There will be some restaurants kind of in there, but mostly the heart and soul will be basically hawkers. And we're hoping to get them to bring their original signage. So it's not going to be like a unifying design theme. You're going to have these nasty backlit signs saying pig organ soup and, stuff like that. So it's going to feel right.
Yeah. So then Appetites, your first cookbook in more than 10 years. Mm-hmm. It was released a few weeks back now. I'd like to call on stage your co-author, Laurie Woolever. So can we welcome Laurie? So how long have you guys been working together, and how did you meet? Because it's a pretty interesting story as well.
Cookbook first, or the first cookbook.
Yeah. Right. I worked with Tony on Anthony Bourdain's Leal cookbook, which was published in 2004. I had sort of a more limited role than I did in Appetites. I took the sort of kitchen Bible recipes and from their original kitchen form and edited them into more of a home cook style recipe. And then also did the recipe editing for that.
Yeah. So then the idea of this cookbook, essential recipes that everybody should know, how did you guys decide and curate the list of what's going in the book, what's not going to make the cut?
Well, I mean, my point of view was the reality of who I've been cooking for the last better part of a decade is a little girl. I mean, she's the decision maker in the house. I mean, I'm not cooking dinner that my daughter is not going to eat. Yeah. And in fact, because I'm away so much of the time, and I feel guilty about it, I'm actively trying to smother her in my own with food and in my own inarticulate way, trying to express love through cooking. And so it is my version of a family cookbook, and I guess that was the starting point for our discussion. And Laurie co-wrote, basically made every reasonable decision about the thing. General contracted. You tell them it was she did all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, it's a big. I mean, it's not just writing, but running the photo shoots and bringing in props and sort of making decisions on the fly about just everything, every piece of building a cookbook. And there's a lot of people, a lot of people's labor behind the book. But.
And considering your extensive travel schedule, right? I know Laurie was mentioning the use of technology, right? Being at Google, kind of how did you guys facilitate him being in Asia and you guys working on the cookbook here? How much did you guys actually meet in person, right?
A couple of times, but I mean, we worked together. I'm Tony's assistant, and I've been doing that job for 7 years. So I'd say 99% of our work is over email. I mean, it's rare. I think we've seen each other more in the past few weeks than in the past year because of the book coming out. But so email's a perfect medium, I think, for getting done everything that we need to get done, including the book.
Laurie came up to me at a party about 3 years after we were working together, and she literally came up to me at a party and said, "Hi, I'm Laurie Woolever, your assistant."
Because first there was a look like, oh, this is a little blonde lady. And then it was like, oh, yeah, you know everything about me. Yes. Yeah. nice to see you.
Yeah.
I called you just the other night for the duct tape and the quicklime. And
So the cover art, right, which we're seeing here, what exactly does this mean, right? It's
with the cover.
This the book.
I wanted it to look completely unlike any cookbook that had ever happened before. I wanted it to terrify and my publisher, if possible, and confuse major retailers, which it has done successfully. I think two major retailers have insisted that this come in plain white wrapping on the outside because this cover was just too much for them. They wouldn't order the book without like wrapping it up like porn.
And they also made us put a cookbook on the front because it was not clear from the cover that it was a cookbook.
But so is too. I wanted an awesome cover that was that did not look like anybody else's cookbook. That was really important. And I wanted to work with Ralph Steadman, who, for me, I mean, I grew up very, very, very important books to me as a young man, as a tween, as a teenager. Was Hunter Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail in particular, and the artwork that appeared in those books and in Rolling Stone back when Rolling Stone actually published non-Britney Spears related material. It was great stuff. I mean, I'd run to the corner to get Rolling Stone and read Thompson and see this incredible artwork. So the opportunity to work with Ralph Steadman was, I mean, you could jump on it. And then the photographer Bobby Fischer, who did an amazing job. And again, we both spoke to him, and we're constantly, you can do whatever you want, just make it awesome and alarming and unlike anybody else's. And as with the shows, I really want people, even people who liked my earlier work, to look at the new stuff and say, what the fuck is that? This is not what I, got last book or before that. So I think we succeeded there.
Yeah.
And you've divided the recipes kind of into 14 sections. And I think the easiest way to get an idea, like you mentioned, of the rich photography and the stories is if we just look at a few of the dishes. So this first one, I think you said, is the Buddha jjigae. It's a Korean kind of army stew. And it's
the ultimate, this is the dorm food that America needs.
Yeah.
It's perfect for, sort of stoner, late night, bad roommate who can't really cook. This is a dish that grew up during times of incredible poverty and difficulty during the Korean War. Basically, hungry Koreans either scavenged or swapped or stole or somehow got what little meat was available from mostly from military PXs, which happened to be like Spam, hot dogs, Vienna sausages. And they combined it with what they had, which was kimchi and the chili sauce, and maybe instant ramen noodles. And they put it all together in this unholy mess that cooks in about, under an hour, all in one pot. It doesn't sound good. Like Spam, kimchi, hot dogs, or Vienna sausage. What else? It's the ramen noodles.
There's ground pork. There's an anchovy broth that's sort of the base of it.
But it is awesome.
Yeah, and you made it for Anderson.
So it's so delicious, and what's great is pretty much anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So, and you can do it on a hot plate.
Yeah.
If called upon to do so. It's really the perfect food. Everyone who's eating instant ramen noodles, microwave ramen, you can do this. and it's an enlightening dish. You will be a better person having eaten this.
As I was going to say, you made it for Anderson, right? And Anderson just was...
torturing him is so much fun. He doesn't eat anything. The guy grew up eating I think he says saltine crackers and peppermint schnapps, I think was the only thing in his house growing up. I mean...
So we have a few more if you want to just walk us through I think this is the beginning of the sandwich chapter.
I don't like that third slice in the club sandwich. This is my way of sort of indicating that. Why do they have that slice? It ruins everything. It's the worst kind of food decision because it was put there so that you could cut the sandwich in quarters and put a frilly toothpick through and lay it down on the plate. Oh, isn't that pretty? But it fucks up the whole sandwich. Yeah. It causes your tomato layer and bacon and everything just sort of squirts out the side. It's structurally unsound. So this is a way of indicating my contempt. Look, there's a story here that said, look, I have an unholy love for those sausages. You know, those terrible street fairs.
Yeah.
You know, they sell the dusty, dried spices and the tube socks and the same dreary, businesses and inedible food. Yeah, but the sausage and pepper stands, with the dirty griddles with the onions and peppers and that nasty sausage at like bacteria-friendly temperatures, just cooking away. And some guy in a filthy T-shirt making it. I love that shit. Yeah. And I can never resist. And I know what happens within around 40 minutes of eating those things. So this is my way of saying, be prepared.
So this is Eric Ripert of Le Bourdain. He's often in some of your episodes, right?
Well, what's the story behind this dish? This is the uni and, right?
Right. This is a dish that actually got cut from the cookbook because somebody published it about a year ahead of our book, and we didn't. It was Ruth Reichel's book. It was a version, but it was close enough that, and it was Eric's. It was obviously Eric's recipe, so we had to let it go. But it's great.
The idea was I'd be dressed as him. I think I was wearing one of his jackets, and he was dressed in one of my Jiu Jitsu shirts, and. Yeah, he's a good sport. I'm always torturing the poor guy. I don't know. It's the hair. It's so perfect. It just brings it out. Brings it out on me.
This, I think, the lobster ravioli of salt cod with lobster sauce, right?
Yeah, this was, I think, just Bobby's idea. Stand up against a wall, put on the lobster bib. I hate lobster bibs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting one.
I do that a lot just for fun.
Yeah. And then Eric makes another appearance.
Yeah, I mean, this story comes from doing a speaking tour with him. We basically have like a Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis routine on the road where, he plays a straight man most of the time. And, we just do live gigs. And we were traveling through the South, and we were in an airport, and I introduced him to biscuits and gravy. And, he is from France. He does not understand these our ways. And, if you've ever had biscuits and gravy, it's like, why, there's two biscuits and this kind of milky gravy over the top and no visible sausage per se. So if you've ever seen a dog eat a grape, like, if you've ever given a dog like a whole grape, they put it in their mouth and kind of roll it around, not sure whether to bite it or spit it out, and they get this sort of confused look. He got that look, so I thought, I'd like to capture that on camera. He looks kind of sad, though, in this, yeah.
And then the back cover, obviously. This is it's one of my favorite photos in the book, right? What was the story here? Is this your...
Well, we were looking to do these big panoramas of, like, I think it was Bruegel or these, I guess, 19th century or 18th century paintings of generally sort of social commentary paintings of gluttonous people eating with dogs snapping at their, eating the scraps off the floor, all of these things happening all at one table, kind of a beggar's banquet kind of a scene. All I can say, a lot of angry animal activists and vegetarians started sending me some very rude comments after this. Look, that is an essential ingredient. That thing's going right into the pate.
Yeah.
I'm not mutilating the dead for amusement purposes. That's a very important ingredient in tête de porc. It's a wild boar. They're pests, by the way. They destroy, farms and agriculture and create the dangerous holes in the ground that horses snap their little legs in. So, and they'd kill you if they could. So, son of a bitch got what he deserved. That's what I'm saying.
So, what is kind of your favorite dish from the book? If you had to boil it down and pick one.
The most delicious dish what's the most delicious dish? It was
the pork sandwich.
It's a sandwich.
Yeah.
It was. We were experimenting with it. Actually, you got there. She came in with this thing, and it's like unbelievable. Yeah. It's a Macau style pork sandwich. So I'd eaten the sandwich in Macau, and I described it, and what I remembered it as. And Laurie came in with the recipe, and we made it for the photo shoot. And I mean, everybody was on that thing like seagulls on a chicken wing. It was just so really simple and really delicious. What?
Just there's a marinade. It's a pork chop on the bone. I think maybe we actually took it off the bone for the book, but it's originally was on the bone, pounded thin, and it's marinated in spices and some hot chili oil, and then pounded out and breaded and fried. It's very simple, but it's the warm spices and the heat and a little bit of piquancy from black vinegar. It's just really, we had to sort of guard the last one to get the photo, and it was really
it was a problem.
Tough situation.
I like doing the pastas the most. I like cooking pasta. It makes me happiest to cook. That was easily the most delicious. The Korean fried chicken is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And I think the socially conscious dish was probably the Bourdain jjigae, the army stew. I mean, that's the one that I want everyone to.
Yeah.
And then there's a Thanksgiving chapter that's all about. That's more strategy and tactics than actual recipes. How to avoid, senseless butchery around the holidays by careful planning and preparing.
Yeah.
Because the crime rate, the murder rate spikes.
Skyrockets.
It's all about I didn't there's no what happened to the wing. You promised me the wing. You ruined my life, motherfucker.
So we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. So if people want to start queuing at the 2 mics, we'll take some audience questions. Before that, a few rapid-fire questions for you. Favorite new restaurant in New York?
Favorite new restaurant in New York? I don't know. Upland's really good.
Upland. I live near Upland. I've tasted it. Delicious. How much do you really cook nowadays, and how much do you eat? Because on the show, you are eating the entire time.
I'm increasingly more. Everything you see me eat on camera, I'm eating that whole meal, and I'm generally speaking, cleaning my plate. I don't take one bite for the camera and then run off to my trailer, even if I had a trailer. So I'm eating, and I'm drinking everything you see me eat and drink. But I'm not going home and sitting around eating Cheetos all day. If I know I'm doing a big Chinese banquet at 4, I'm not eating until then, and I'm sure as shit not eating afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm really careful about that. At home, I cook a lot. Again, it's all about my daughter. I'll pack her school lunch. I try to cook stuff that, look, I admit, if you've ever seen Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, that I think it's the grandfather is constantly, he puts himself secretly in charge of his, I guess his grandson or his nephew, I forget, it's a child's, it's not his kid, their school lunch, and then gradually sort of starts cooking for everyone in the class. I'm not that nice. I make her lunch, but I make it really nice and really creative because I want the other kids to feel jealous. Yeah. It's like, ooh, what's Ariana eating today? Oh, whoa, spam musubi, what's that? So I work really hard on that, and then I do dinners, and it makes me happy. It's therapeutic for me to cook for a little girl. I cook with her a lot. She really enjoys it. But again, it's the universe revolves around her when I'm back in New York.
The most exotic food you've had?
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
The thing that left you most surprised, either by the taste or the texture, or you were like a little squeamish about it ahead of time, or?
I'm absolutely blank on that. I mean, I've eaten, I don't, authentic, exotic, strange, gross. None of those have any meanings for me anymore, really. Surprising. I mean, look, there are certain things that make my heart soar.
Yeah.
A really good bowl of spicy noodles like a laksa or a bun bo hui is going to reliably, I'm going to get emotional, I mean, literally emotional about. Good uni, really good uni in season. Yeah, I get pretty happy about that.
And have you ever gotten very sick? What is the worst food poisoning you've gotten?
3 times in 15 years, 16 years of making television or all over the world. In every case, there were a tribal situation where, I knew that I was about to take one for the team. The meat is not good. I mean, they're poor. Hygiene is very bad. Everybody's eating out of a communal bowl. It's rotten. I mean, it's funky food. I knew I was going to get sick. But I'll tell you, look, I've eaten warthog ass, okay? Sandy, gritty, undercooked, old. But the worst meal I've ever had in my life was at an airport Johnny Rockets.
On that note, we'll open it up to some audience questions.
You set the bar really high. Huge fan. You basically dictate everything that I eat in every food choice. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to go to Cuba. Mm-hmm. And part of my trip planning for any location that I go is that I watch your episode, whether it's No Reservation or Parts Unknown. And I want to, 2 questions. One, I want to get your perspective on Cuba because you ate sushi while you were down there. So I want to know obviously with the embargo being lifted, how do you think the Cuban gastronomy is going to change? Is it going to be a location where we go to eat? And second, where should I go eat?
Yeah. Look, there are a number of things you got to contend with in Cuba. One is you got to understand that most Cubans, it is completely unimaginable and beyond their means. Certainly 5 years ago, it was unimaginable that Cubans could eat in any restaurant, okay? Much less a restaurant that you'd want to go to. If you saw Cubans eating in restaurants, that they worked for the government or within the limited tourism industry, but it was just far beyond the means of the average Cuban. There is an emerging, tiny but emerging Cuban middle class now as the regs relax. So this last time, there are, people are opening up independently owned businesses in their homes. Paladars, you used to, the government is your 50% partner, but you used to only be able to have a few tables. Now they're big tables. Someone took me to a restaurant where they were actually playing, oons, oons, oons music, and they had foam and, tasting menu, which is unthinkable for anybody. And that sushi restaurant, there were actual Cubans in there. Look, try to eat in, places that Cubans are eating. Their rice and beans, they do a lot with. They're really good. They put a lot of, they have very little, chances are they have very little to work with. And if that's all they're gonna have, they work really hard to make them really, really good. Their beans in particular are spectacular. That sushi place, the name escapes me, is worth going to because it's another side of Cuba. There's that fancy rooftop lounge place that someone will inevitably want to take you to. There are a limited number of businesses, but just when you do eat around, be aware that most Cubans can't, like absolutely can't. And what's going to happen? I tend to over-sentimentalize how beautiful it is and how untouched, but they call that poverty. And, we may not want a fancy new W hotel sitting on the Malecon because it'll ruin the skyline that we want, we think we want. They're okay with that. We may think those old cars are charming. They want a new car. So I don't know. I hope they can keep the country beautiful. I mean, I personally hope that they can maintain this, the level of education that they're getting for free and free medical, however rudimentary the equipment and supplies. But they want and deserve their flat screen TVs too, and they're going to insist on the good and the bad of America, and I suspect we'll be all too happy to give it to them. But go now. It's gorgeous and lovely, lovely, lovely people.
Thank you.
Let's take one from this side.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for coming to speak to us. I actually went to Hanoi last week and went to the restaurant that you went with to Obama.
Was it all messed up now with like the Obama special?
Yes, yeah. I got the Obama special. That's the only thing you can get. Which was fine because they didn't understand English anyway, so that's the only thing I could order. I wanted to know how do you choose the restaurants that you go to? And I'm sure you get like a lot of tips, and how do you narrow it down? Right.
There are a few ways to go. First of all, having been a chef for many years, it's pretty easy. It's like being in the mafia. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. I'd been in the case of Vietnam, I knew where we wanted to go because I'd been there many times before. I knew Bún Chả was the Hanoi thing. And in fact, after that scene, the next day, when people read in the paper that the president had eaten Bún Chả, people would come up to me in the street crying, incredibly moved that the president, they said, we can't believe it, that the president came and ate Bún Chả. Not spring rolls, not pho, not food from the South, not national food. He ate Bún Chả, our thing. He drank Hanoi beer on a low plastic stool. They were so moved by that. We choose because we're pretty well connected everywhere at this point. We have experience at a lot of places like Vietnam. But then you can always provoke nerd fury online, and this is a really useful thing when choosing restaurants. Let's say you're going to Singapore for the first time, and you want the best laksa in Singapore. You've never been there, it's a problem. You go to an annoying foodie website Anyone that's heavily populated with, super opinionated, pedantic, annoying food nerds who spend all of their lives talking about, their once-in-a-lifetime experiences and their expertise and finding authentic restaurants. So just Google any restaurant that serves laksa in Singapore and put up, post on the website, I just returned from Singapore and I had the best laksa in the entire universe at such and such a place. Then just stand back and wait for these annoying fucks to correct you, and tell you at length what an idiot you are and how you should have gone to such and such a place, get a consensus of 30 or 40 of these guys, and you get a pretty good picture of where to go.
I'll try
It's
that.
child's play. It's really...
Thank you.
We'll take one over here.
So I've watched a lot of your shows over the years, and in them your tone kind of changes between show to show. I mean, one standout is in The Layover, you have varying degrees of, I guess, TV friendliness in a way, but you had this hilarious moment in Philadelphia in front of the park with the Liberty Bell and tour group. So I just wanted to ask, how much is that just, you feeling different about each show, and how much is that, I guess, the network or the TV show?
Yeah, there's no script, ever. I couldn't remember a script in any case. There's no guidance, there's no no one writes the show. I write the show afterwards. I mean, no, look, I'll in some shows, I'll write what I want to do, and maybe I'll have a theme, and I might even have blocked out segments the way we hope it's going to go. But in the case of that show, I was just desperate and unhappy and drunk and look, and the shows change in tone depending on my mood and depending on the subject of the show. Some subjects make me angry. I mean, if it's a Mexican border show, I have very strong opinions about immigration, and you're going to hear them, and the show is going to reflect that. Other times, it's a goofy, sentimental, melancholy. It's entirely based, and also I try very hard to make each show different than the other. I mean, I hate shows where every show has the same story arc. It goes up, you have a predictable peak, and then you have that closing monologue. I think we've all learned something here today, that maybe someday, if we all work together, there will be peace. And no, there won't be peace. We're all going to get crushed under the same wheel. Or not. I mean, depending. I mean, if I feel there should be an upbeat ending, there is, but the tone very. I have the luxury of having a show that can reflect my mood at the time, and I also benefit very much from low expectations, so that helps.
Hi, I just moved from Singapore. So I have a question. What's the best laksa that you recommend?
It's, oh my God. Well, the best laksa in the world, in my view, is in Kuching. The place we featured on the show, it's amazing. But it's called, is it Songhe?
But my question is about the U.S.
In the U.S.?
Your help, yeah.
I haven't had good laksa in the U.S. Not really, not like that.
I have an answer. Taste Good in Elmhurst, Queens, has, to my experience, the best.
That's going to be a legit answer, by the way. Because we tried very hard to get a decent recipe. Mm. So it's similar.
Yes, very much inspired by what they do.
That's encouraging.
Actually, it's about the same subject. So the best in New York, for example, is still kind of mediocre Asia quality. Mm. I'm really excited about your hawker concept, by the way. Do you think that's going to raise the bar for other Asian restaurants in New York? Because, I saw on First Look New York on TV, and they have the new XLB, which is like a giant xiaolongbao that you drink with a straw, and it's like,
yes, that's wrong.
It makes me really upset. So,
yeah.
Are you gonna?
Look, I think Asia's a big place. I think some Asian countries are underrepresented. Some Asian cultures compromised very early on and adapted to what they perceived to be the Western market. Some stayed resolutely the same and didn't give a shit what anybody thought. So I don't know. Will it raise the bar? I don't know. I hope so. I mean, there are certain dishes that if you don't do right, you may as well not do them at all. And I think chicken rice would be a good example of that. Yeah, I hadn't ever thought about that, but I hope so. I mean, if you can get it for cheap, or relatively cheap at a food stand, at a hawker stall, you're going to have a harder time charging $29.95 for a worse version in a sit-down restaurant with, you know, fake sort of Pan-Asian decor. And, you know, we've all been there, you know, dry ice, you know, the Buddha statue, and a sort of quasi-Thai, Chinese, Polynesian, Kobe slider menu. You know, it's like, I hate those places. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a Vietnamese American, so your Obama interview was one of the coolest interviews I've seen on TV. Wanted to hear just the background on it. How did you get him to Vietnam, and what were the logistics behind it?
Well, the White House had reached out to us about a year earlier, just kind of expressing an interest in the president coming on the show. And we talked about various locations we might do that at various times. Chicago was considered briefly. And then after some back and forth for a while and discussions of schedules, all super secret, you know, no one knew, the network didn't know, camera people didn't know, just a very small group of people. We were told in confidence that the president would be doing a Southeast Asia tour and that Vietnam would be one of the stops. And I was like, right, oh no, okay, Vietnam. And we hadn't planned on doing a Vietnam show, but that was, I'm always looking for any excuse. That was a good one. So Hanoi, and I literally, I thought, Hanoi, Bun Cha. I mean, if we're gonna, I'm not in the business, I'm gonna do an interview about Southeast Asian economic policy. That's not what I do. I thought if the president of the United States wants to come on the show, it's because he's seen the show and likes it. Let's do that. Let's let him play and have a good time and do something also that's representative of what we do and what they do so well in Hanoi. And so I knew right away it went like this. President, Hanoi, Bun Cha. And it was making those things happen. And then also standing there in the street in the rain was sort of cool. That scene actually was filmed before the Bun Cha scene. I'm standing there under this corrugated tin hunk of metal, pouring rain, this muddy street, working class outskirts of Hanoi, and this woman who's running like a little selling gum and cigarettes is sort of dozing in her chair with no idea what's about to happen. The car pulls up, and as the president gets out of the car, I turn to my producer behind the camera, and I just, because he looked so at ease and so smooth and so relaxed and at sort of home in the world and happy to be in Southeast Asia. And I just suddenly heard this song in my head. I said, okay, we have to get the rights to The Boss by James Brown. I don't care how much it costs, how we get it. We need that to be his walk-on music. And that took some dealing with the James Brown estate. You know, it's not cheap. But we got that, and he looked like very happy to be drinking beer from the bottle, sitting on a low plastic stool. I'd asked him at one point, Mr. President, do you smell that? Do you like that smell? It's very powerful to me. And he said, oh yeah, it reminds me of, you know, when I was young in Jakarta. So it was a very comfortable scene with him. It was only after the scene was over that me and the camera guys were all like, did that just happen? We just hung out with the president, and he was like really cool. Thanks.
Hey, Tony, again, huge fan. I had basically a two-part question. Firstly, I know you've been to India a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Why does Indian food in the US suck? Can you explain that?
Right.
Or do you have an opinion on it? And the second thing was that if someone ever ordered a steak well done at your restaurant, what would you do to them?
Well, look, when I was younger, if you ordered a steak well done, I would find the shittiest, nerviest, most tough, the worst piece, because how are you going to notice? As I got older, I mean, I realized this attitude was killing me. You know, this kind of rage was not good for anybody. But I'm not going to punish him for it. I mean, Donald Trump eats well-done steak, by the way. He eats his steak well done. No reflection on the man and his policy. Well, yeah, actually, I think it is a reflection on the man and his policy. What was the question?
Indian food.
Indian food. Why? Because we insist that it suck. Also, we refuse to pay for it. The assumption is that Chinese food and Indian food and Mexican food should be cheap because the first waves of that was cheap, and now we insist that it's cheap. And why? Well, racism. I mean, basically. I mean, these are old, in every case, way older, incredibly diverse, incredibly sophisticated, deep cuisines. But we're sort of insisting on preserving and promoting the lesser end of it, and not embracing its full possibility. That's going to change, though. I mean, it is changing. It will change. It has to change. Not fast enough, for sure. But I mean, even regional. India's big. The food from all over is extraordinarily diverse, and we're nowhere near making the kind of distinctions that we could. But then we don't do that with Italy either. We'll get there eventually. I mean, one of the good things about this insane, foodieism that's swept over us is that it's increased the likelihood that we will eventually kind of come around, and certainly the level of curiosity and even sophistication as far as these things, I think, has increased. Here's hoping.
So I think we got time for one more audience question.
So this is actually not a food question, but I know you're a big fan of Jiu Jitsu. I'm curious if you're able to practice when you're traveling or shooting, and if you do, how do you manage?
I train everywhere I go, and that means that I go into some pretty broke-ass excuses for gyms, and sometimes really terrifying. I mean, I go in, I join the regular, Laurie's, she calls these places, and generally I'll go into regular classes. It's like Fight Club, and when you go into, some places have very good jiu-jitsu, they'll have a resident Brazilian, black belt. Other times, Hanoi, the highest ranking practitioner at running the school, was a blue belt. Other times, like Budapest, I go in and it's like a bad guys in a Schwarzenegger film. I mean, they're all sitting around just all white belts with cauliflower ears and scary tattoos, and they're all super jacked and really competitive, and everything they teach in the first class is stuff that would get you expelled immediately from my academy. All these, it's horrifying brutality. So I guess what I'm saying is I get my ass kicked everywhere in the world, everywhere I go, and there are very few countries where they don't have something that at least pretends to be jiu-jitsu, and I try really hard to train, at least, if not every day, as close to every day as I can. It's satisfying to me, probably because it's the hardest thing I've ever done, and because I like being at the bottom of a very steep learning curve again. So it's like being the worst cook in the kitchen all over again. So it's just like starting in the restaurant business all over again. It's this never-ending, very steep learning curve that feels like the stupidest, hardest thing in the world, and it's satisfying to suck a little bit less at something, every few days, hopefully. So it's very happy. I don't want to end with a niche question like that. I could talk about this shit all day long, but let's leave it a dick joke or something. If there's maybe one more.
Yeah. Do we have one more audience question? Yeah.
Hi. I was wondering if you have any advice for navigating the food scene around New York and deciding where to go to eat.
Wow.
Go to Queens. That's my advice.
Solid answer. Sorry, that's about as best as I could come up with.
Yeah, skip Manhattan altogether. There's a lot of good stuff in Manhattan, but don't ignore Queens, because the food is tremendous and cheaper, and a lot of times much better. That's my opinion. I happen to live in Queens.
We're doing a whole episode there at some point in the future, highlighting this wonderland of diverse cuisine and deliciousness, and very excited about it. And yeah, absolutely right, Queens.
So let's give a big thank you to Tony and Laurie.
Thank you.
So be sure to check out the rest of Season 8 of Parts Unknown and Appetites at a bookstore near you.